Okay. Alright guys, we're going to have Mike give a talk for us, so let's enjoy this, and then after his talk we'll get on to the quiz. So let's see what he's got to say.
Alright, so this talk is going to be on a responsible disclosure that I gave to Dorset Police about a year ago. So if we've got any feds in the room.
Right,
so yeah. So who I might want to, I work at JP Morgan. I'm one of the GRC analysts / team leads for one of the various cyber groups in JP Morgan. I'm also an OWASP Dorset chapter leader, so if you come to those events you've probably seen me there. But I'm a software engineer and a security engineer, like wear both those hats. So a little overview on the disclosure of software vulnerabilities in general. So software vulnerabilities are discovered all the time when researchers look for them. They go and browse websites or look at applications, typically looking at like static code analysis or using DAS tools to scan them and then like go off the back of those dynamic scanning tools. But essentially when they find the security weaknesses within the application, they usually want to be able to report them directly to the organisations responsible for then fixing those vulnerabilities. So that comes with various pitfalls, which is probably good to be aware of. There's been several cases in the news where if you report something, suddenly the police are knocking on your door, which doesn't help when you're reporting issues for the police either. But yeah, something to be aware of is if you don't go down like a defined path, that's like a happy path for disclosing these vulnerabilities, like if the organisation's not that mature, you will land in hot water. So yeah, the reports can provide you with valuable information as an organisation with how to improve your security posture, and then just from that you should be mitigating the vulnerability, removing it entirely, and then that risk is removed from the application. It's in your best case to encourage vulnerability disclosure because A, it's free most of the time, unless you're operating a bug bounty. If someone just randomly contacts you and says, hey, I found this vulnerability, you need to fix it, that's saved you a pen test, that's saved you doing any kind of cost whatsoever, other than the downward mitigation, the downstream mitigation, I should say. So yeah, having clearly signposted your reporting process, this demonstrates that your organisation takes the security risk seriously, and it makes it easier for people to contact you. Like, if you make it more difficult, the likelihood of you getting a public disclosure, which is just releasing the fact that you've got a vulnerability, then all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of people know that you've got this vulnerability, you're not going to be in the best place to deal with that. So yeah, the process reduces your reputational damage from that public disclosure. So having that policy easily available, as you'll see, will be easier for you to disclose it if you ever find a vulnerability. So what vulnerability did I find? Well, at one point in time I was reporting a crime on Dorset Police's website, and when you go into that form, you fill out obviously like your name, your address, what force you're reporting it to. But when you look up your address, this pop-up comes up which searches for, you put in a postcode, it does a third-party lookup to find what address you've got linked to that postcode, and then the API responds back with a rough estimate of what your address is, and then you get multiple possibilities, you just pick the one that's yours. So a relatively benign service. But when you look at the requests that this API call makes, does anyone spot the issue?
It's pretty hard to read, unfortunately.
Is that key? Is that basically?
Yes, no.
So yeah, luckily, obviously you're all like pretty versed in cyber, but the authentication mechanism that it's using is basic authentication, which basic auth, if you don't know, just takes a base64 encoded string, and then that base64 encoded string contains both your username and your password encoded in a format, and because it's encoding, not encryption, that can be reversed. So why is sending base64 credentials bad? This tool is called CyberChef, if you've not used it before. You essentially put in an input string, which is what that request was making. Tell it that it's a base64 that you're going to decode from, which decodes nicely into Dorset-website as a username, Dorset website with E's turned into 3's and capital letters and all sorts of rubbish. But you know, I've now got your credentials, like hacker voice, I'm in. So the problem, if you look at the OWASP standards, you've got the A2 2017 broken authentication. So that's the newest top 10 rating. So if you look at the top 10, this is second in the list. It's one of those things that you really should be aware of. But yeah, so we can confirm the user's identity. We know the auth. We know the session management is critical to protect against the authentication-related attacks. They're using plain text effectively because it's just encoded. It's weak, or you could potentially have a weak hash or a weak encryption, but in this case, it's basically plain text. So we've also got A3, which is sensitive data exposure. So passwords do require extra protection. They are secret. They should be kept secret. So using old weak cryptographic standards or B2600, which isn't even an encryption scheme, obviously that is bad. And then finally, yeah, B2600 is an encoding scheme. It just takes binary input, encodes it, and then you can reverse it. And then that link goes to the OWASP cheat sheet series, which tells you how to do it properly. So have a look at that. Or just Google it if you want the link. So when it comes to disclosure, there's two types. You can either do a full disclosure, which you publicly release all your findings. You tell everyone in the entire world that you've found a vulnerability, the steps to achieve the actual exploitation. And then if you're unable to contact that company, that's why you might do it, because you just can't get hold of someone, they haven't given you a path to contact anyone. The vulnerability report that you sent might have been ignored, the report wasn't fixed, you might be afraid of a legal prosecution, which I definitely was going into a police submission. Because at that point in time, no one's authorised me to do any hacking. Not that I've really done hacking, I've just observed network going across a network, or data going over a network. But it could put pressure on your dev team and your PR department, because if the hacker hasn't informed the company first, this is the first time they're hearing about it, like someone's just dropped this information on Twitter. Holy shit! And then responsible disclosure is the way that I did it. So in this case, you reach out to the organisation and you provide they provide a transparent set of rules that you're supposed to follow to disclose it correctly. You can either just go, hey, I found this massive bug, and if I just do this, I've deleted your database. Ha ha ha! Don't do that. Follow their rules, do it properly. In this case, you tell them the steps to activate the exploit or whatever it is that you've done, but don't do it in a way that causes harm. Just do enough to prove that it's a thing. They may come back and say that you haven't proved impact because you've not destroyed a database or deleted everyone's users. But at the end of the day, you've got to kind of remind them, if I do that, I'm going to jail. So let's not do that. So yeah, it can be messy to know exactly how far you go, what details you need to share. But generating a responsible disclosure policy, it can be confusing, but there are guides online that you can follow to do this in a nice way. So if you're an org that hasn't published a disclosure policy, I've got links to guides that I can share, so we can kind of go through that, and then just you write a nice disclosure. I think I've got it in the next slide. If not, I can talk about it. Okay. So ideally, you want a dedicated email address, something simple like security@whoever.com. That then just contacts a team responsible for those vulnerability disclosures. So it will go directly to the right people. They then fix the issue. An alternative is a security.txt. So this is something you put in your web root, and then that is just a text file that has, again, all the content that tells you who to contact, what the procedures are. And then this is defined by RFC 9116, and you just put it in that directory, and then if people like us are aware of it, we know where to go to just find the right team to deal with an issue. So in this case, I didn't have to do any of that. I just clicked on this button at the bottom of the website that said report a problem with the page. It just takes you to a Google form. One of the issue types is security vulnerability. Put the link that I found it on, and then just describe the issue in detail, how to replicate the problem. So in this disclosure timeline, so this was 2021, all the way back in November. submitted the form, and then within 3 days, which is absolutely obscene, like in a good way, like they responded ridiculously fast. Yeah, I got a response from them. So the response was, so please, they're a public org, you can do like FOIA requests to see this kind of stuff. It's not a big deal that I'm sharing the email, but so yeah, just thought I'd offer a reply to correspondence. I'd like to thank you for raising this. This issue was highlighted to us at a prior pen test, and we obviously didn't do anything about it.
Yes, we know about it.
So one of the third-party solutions was to implement a token and IP restriction. They didn't do either of them. They just left it as it was, which then they're now having to deal with it because I've raised it again to them. So, yay, they fixed their endpoint. They did the IP restriction that they said they were going to do. So now when you try to do it, you just get a forbidden message. Like, if you're not coming from an IP that's been whitelisted as a police IP, it no longer works. But it broke the website. Yay, you can't report crimes anymore.
Crime has been abolished.
So now when you try to put your address in, the address just wouldn't work. It just doesn't function at all. If you don't complete that step, you fail the form validation, you can't report a crime. Excellent work. So I sent another response to them. I said, hey, you've broken your website. And apparently what turned up is from there, again, they responded super quick, so fair play. But the response in this case was, hey, this is the website, this doesn't work anymore. And they said, oh, so the way, you probably know this a bit more than I would do, but Dorset police share services with Cornwall. So Cornwall, they fixed their site, leaving ours broken. So again, once I'd raised that, they then fixed ours too. So then we got an additional IP added. So end of that story. They use a totally different website now, so that vulnerability is completely remediated, hence disclosing it again. But here's links to the NCSC and BugCrowd and OWASP for doing vulnerability disclosure correctly. So if you're an org, or if you're in an org one day and you want to do this correctly, do it the right way so that researchers can find out how to do this. Follow those links, look at the guidance, and create a nice security.txt that people like me can report stuff to. That's it.
So what you're saying is don't demand money after.
Yeah.
Where's
my money?
Should we do questions?
What led you to limit their code in the first place? Was there something wrong with the way that it was working? Or were you just being nosy?
What led you to look at the code?
I was just being nosy, yeah.
That's what we do.
Would you advise researchers to research what companies have bug bounty programs before they do this stuff to random websites?
Yeah. So if you're going into this looking specifically for vulnerabilities, then definitely go through like a bug bounty program, because you'll have hundreds of companies that already have all their disclosure procedures and the scoping for the rules of engagement when you do this research. They'll tell you exactly what you can and can't do. So if you're on the bug bounty, you can just stay within the scope, and they'll tell you exactly what websites they want looked at as well. So you're not like just, I mean, you could kind of go off piece a bit, but then you're not going to potentially earn bounties. So it's actually.
And if you can't reach that company, but you don't want to fully disclose, what other avenues can a researcher take to get that information to that company?
Trawl LinkedIn or like try and find people. That's probably what I would do.
Information sharing and analysis centers, so ISACs. So you could, if you're a researcher, you can, if you can figure out what sector that company's in, you can speak to the ISAC, and then they can basically get it to that company for you, which is another good thing that I recommend everyone.
Good way to earn challenge points.
Yeah.
Did you test the new vendor to see if they just reused the new vendor? Oh.
Yeah. So I don't think the new vendor uses the same service provider, but it's not vulnerable anymore.
What sort of prerequisites do people have to be able to do what you did? Do they have to, like what sort of skills or experience?
Press
So-
F12.
So ideally, if you would, I mean, I just did this on a whim. I was like, as I was filling the form, I was like, oh, I wonder what service this uses. I think I probably was trying to do like a map lookup myself at the time. So I was like, I'll see what they use. But this is the developer tools in Chrome, and as someone said, if you want to get it, just press F12. This is what pops up. You can look at the source code. The network shows you data traffic, so you hit the network tab, refresh the page, and it would show you like everything that gets downloaded. And then you click on that one, it gives you the detail. So from that, it's just a case of noticing that it's basic auth. But what you want to do is set up a proxy so that you can monitor like the entire HTTP request, like, and then you follow it through that way, and you can you can tamper it in flight. But
No Burp Suite?
sorry, Mr.
Burp Suite?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So ZAP or Burp Suite, and any attack proxy, it basically just sits in between the browser and the website. So you'd see this, and then as soon as it happens, Burp Suite catches it, and you can tamper with it. But in this case, you didn't need to tamper it. It's just
You don't even need Burp Suite. Firefox has interception capabilities on its own. You just put its own F12 menu.
Would you say the thing that made you realise there was a potential issue is because you understood what base64 is and what those strings look like as well?
yeah. So there is like prior reading you'd have to do. Like obviously, I understand just looking at that from
Two
like,
equal signs on the end.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed.
yeah.
As well
So
as scrambled and things.
so one fix for this, instead of using basic auth, would be to use bearer tokens, and then you'd have to go through the the OpenID process to get the token, or you could pass like a JWT or something there. Because that bearer token, if you don't have the secret keys used to generate them, it doesn't matter. You can't see the data. So.
If you were you just did this one on a whim because you realised I was in input box or something. But if you selected some kind of bug bounty program and you didn't know where to start and you wanted to find a bug, how would you go about doing that?
So if you weren't going for a bug bounty,
Yeah, so if you weren't doing it on a whim, but then you joined the bug bounty program, you have this website, and then you're just looking for one.
yeah. So typically, if you go through a bug bounty program and they've given you the scope, so they'll tell you exactly what website, like URLs and IP addresses you can attack. So at that point, you're going to be doing a load of reconnaissance on those domains to see like any subdomains are attached to it, and you're just doing loads of recon essentially. But it's then up to you to like find, all right, which of these endpoints have anything juicy that I can like dig into.
Yeah.
Because that is like there's a massive rabbit hole that you can go down. That.
Well, it's very good that you disclosed all of this, but unfortunately, Mike, you're under arrest. So, yeah, sorry, Mike.
Very good. All right, see you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.